So Christine has a background with nonprofit work. I'm a nonprofit baby. Christine graduated from UCLA. I am a Belmont High School dropout. But we share a knowledge base that's really rooted in the community.
And we wanted to do something nice and have them feel the love of the community. And that's what it really was about. We were facilitating gifts from the community to help ease their pain for a moment, just to have a warm meal that they could enjoy.
Hi, it's Steph. And those were the voices of JOHNERIC CONCORDIA and Christine Araquel-Concordia. They are life partners and business partners, showing love to people through the food they serve in Los Angeles. Their restaurant is called The Park's Finest, and it serves American cuts of barbecue with a Filipino flavor. They started as a catering business in 2009, then in 2012 made a brick-and-mortar restaurant. They are a beloved staple in LA with a loyal following. Then, like so many other business owners, the COVID-19 pandemic hit their restaurant business hard. So they decided to go back to how they started. They returned to catering, but in a new way by focusing their operations through the Feed the Frontliners project. Their effort is aided by community members and angel sponsors who want to take care of healthcare workers, which includes nurses, doctors, clerical and custodial staff, as well as emergency responders. Specifically, that means preparing hot meals and delivering them to those workers as a warm-hearted show of support and solidarity during these unprecedented times. Beyond the show of heart, this act of generosity and figuring out how to actually do it shows the knowledge that both Christine and JOHNERIC have of community organizing, which has been a lifelong passion for both of them. I can't wait for you to hear from this cool couple about growing up in LA, learning about activism, role models, service, family, and food. So let's get to it. This is the Another Door Opens podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie Himango. Here are JOHNERIC Concordia and Christine Araquel-Concordia.
We do American cuts of barbecue with a Filipino flavor, and we're lucky enough to have a restaurant on 1267 West Temple Street, down the street from where we've grown up.
And you both immediately modified your business by necessity. I know it wasn't a straight line or an easy line, but when the pandemic hit, you found a way to use your knowledge and community organizing skills to serve meals primarily to people within the healthcare and medical communities. Why did you choose that particular community, first of all? And then secondly, where did you begin to approach what I feel seems like a massive undertaking?
We were working on our delivery takeout model at the time for that first week. And during that week, we had a good number of healthcare workers who were coming in and talking to us. And it was a time for us to just catch up and find out what was happening on the ground in terms of the difficulties they were facing, the stress they were facing, because it was completely fresh for everyone to figure out how do we get through this. And from a healthcare worker's perspective, we wanted to know what we needed to do and also how we could help them, because they were mentioning to us how difficult it was for them to get a meal in, given the new stress and the load that they're experiencing in the workplace. They expressed to us just how difficult it was for them to be with their families and provide dinner for them. And they would come in and buy some food from us so that they wouldn't have to worry about that. It's just one less thing. We wanted to help. And so we put a call out to the community to see if they would cover plates for healthcare workers. Later on, it was very popular in where we were getting a lot of community members who wanted to contribute.
So then came the opportunity where an angel sponsor reached out to us and said, I'd like to do 800. They handed us a check and we looked at it and it was considerably more than $800. And they said, yeah, 800 people. Now, logistically, How can you deal with 800 people figuring out what time they're going to come by and pick up their food for 4 people, or maybe just for themselves at a specific time when none of us knew how this virus was being distributed, right? So
Right.
imagine the nerves. Remember a time, the first week, the first month, where we looked at each other with fear. For those that actually stepped out into the city where it was barren, there was nobody there and everybody was scared of each other.
And the life of the city was just gone. And
So when they said 800, we had to think about realistically, how can we fulfill this request?
we went back to our original business model, which was catering. We figured the best way for us to provide plates for a larger amount of healthcare workers was with if we could coordinate with the departments who were requesting food. We would take care of their entire department at one time for a lunch shift. So that's how we were able to work it out, where we would get all these different requests from facilities and hospitals, convalescent homes all over Los Angeles County who would request meals for everyone. And we wanted to take care of everyone. That included nurses, that included doctors, as well as clerical staff, custodial staff. We wanted to take care as much of the crew as we could because we understand how the workload has changed. We understand how stressed they were. And we wanted to do something nice and have them feel the love of the community. And that's what it really was about. We were facilitating gifts from the community to help ease their pain for a moment, just to have a warm meal that they could enjoy.
So Christine and John Eric started by observing and listening, and then asking questions.
Our background comes in community organizing, so being able to understand what the needs of the community are, we want to be able to try to fulfill what we can as a restaurant.
I know you didn't have a system yet at that point, but you at least had your catering experience to draw on. How did you start to synthesize all of those pieces, from finding out who had need to scheduling to buying the food, preparing the food, packaging the food, delivering the food? And how many people were involved? I know you two have very much been the leaders of your gift that you're giving to the communities around you. But how many people did you rely on as a core group?
Currently, our personnel that actually would have had something to do with the process of getting the information necessary for you to request the food, the time in place, preparing the food and delivering it, which I would say it's a personnel team of about 15. It's the folks that are from our squad. And then, of course, tapping into our outside resources that can help us with some of the logistical support technically to be able to have all this information gathered. The reason why I guess we are prominently present in our community is because we grew up in this same community, working on events, working on political, social justice issues that we were raised on since we were youth, post riots. Christine is from a youth organization called Kababayan Alliance. She can share exactly what they did. I was with an organization called Youth and Students Taking Action in the Neighborhood, YSAN. And we were able to be taught, trained, and listened to by activists, organizers, counselors, World War II veterans, drug dealers, gangsters, artists, parents, grandparents, all of these stakeholders in the community that gave us chances and opportunities to, one, be kids, but also be accountable participants in community functions. So that could be a health fair. That could be Lotus Festival. That could be a community cleanup. It could be murals. All of those times, we also had to eat and convene prior, during, and after these events. So all of these skill sets we learned, and we just continued to apply it with our business. So Christine has a background with nonprofit work. I'm a nonprofit baby. Christine graduated from UCLA. I am a Belmont High School dropout. but we share a knowledge base that's really rooted in the community, local knowledge base applied with whatever access to academics we can grab.
And so these things that you become involved in and have been involved in both separately and then together from a really early age are visceral for you because it's where you grew up. I would love to hear a little bit more about each of your upbringings and how you were led to community organizing.
I grew up in Long Beach. There was a youth organization. It was an actual pretty interesting coalition. It was called Kababayan Alliance. Kababayan Alliance was a coalition of Filipino high school youth organizations. It was interesting because it was student run. So just high school students getting some input from local nonprofit organizations like People's Community Organization for Foreign Empowerment in Los Angeles. But in terms of the work that was being implemented, it was really determined by the youth.
Christine started her community organizing work when she was just 17 and John Eric, 13.
My older brother was actually involved in it as well, so that's how I came to know about it. Just looking back now, we're very organized because this was the age before any social media and everything was done through pagers and and we would call each other and set up meetings and coordinate the meetings through the greeting of a voicemail. There was a show called Team Summit back in the 90s that discussed youth issues that were happening. And we had a living room based version of that called Sala Talk. Sala is living room in Tagalog. We would pick a topic that was affecting the community and we would discuss it and kind of break it down and try to look at things through a socio-economic political context and try to figure out solutions. If you can imagine a room full of high school kids. And this was also at the height when LA was undergoing a lot of violent, turbulent times at that time. There was a lot of gang violence. And this was one way to get kids off the streets to do something positive and try to organize activities else and learn about themselves. So we had different meetings to figure out when could we do youth leadership development workshops? When could we organize these retreats to learn about Philippine history and culture? And a lot of that stuff we had to kind of figure out how we can facilitate it by looking at the resources in the LA community that could help us learn these things because it wasn't offered in school. It was these educational things that we were seeking that we were resourceful enough to reach out to the facilitators who could help us learn about all these things. So that was interesting.
So you were a teen. You started when you were 17. Were you interacting with adults in the community, and did they heavily influence the way you sort of looked at issues and thought about things that were happening in your community? And did they give you a sense that you had power to influence things?
Absolutely. There were activists that were helping us learn about Philippine history and culture from the organization, People's Community Organization Empowerment. People's Corps was what it was called. So folks like Arturo Garcia, he was one of our mentors, and Joe Navidad, and they were instrumental in helping us learn about the history of Filipinos being active to fight for better conditions for the people. We learned a lot about what was happening historically, and we were able to learn about what people were fighting for at that time. So a big issue that was gaining a lot of attention during that time was the Filipino World War II veterans issue. They had garnered some attention nationally because there were these old men who went on a hunger strike over in MacArthur Park, and they had chained themselves to the MacArthur statue. That was fascinating to see. You know, a lot of Filipinos were not in the media then, not too much. It didn't happen too often. So once you hear about anything related to Filipinos, and then you see these older men who are fighting for something, that piqued our interest, but also helped us understand how racism played a part in singling out a single nation who fought during World War II and nullified their services when they're expecting to get recognition and equity. So that was one thing that caught our attention, and we were able to meet the organizers who started that political struggle, who were working on national campaigns and lobbying in Congress to try to get some benefits for the Filipino World War II veterans. So Mang Piping, he was one of the organizers who also brought us up and helped us be rooted in community and learn about fighting for your rights, but not only fighting for your rights, but it's important to fight to keep your rights once you get it. Solidarity was an important thing that we learned through the activists who raised us. They taught us about international solidarity and learning about the different communities who are affected by different issues, a commonality in people's struggles. And that's how we were able to meet everyone and connect with a lot of different people, whether it was different generations, different cultures. It was an interesting time to organize.
And what a fascinating thing to be able to truly digest at such a young age. The fact that you could have and find solidarity, and you have multicultural awareness and a willingness and a desire to act on behalf of not only your own community, but other communities in need.
It was a nice way to learn, and it kept us hungry to keep learning. And it really solidified a lot of relationships and friendships and just being there for one another, because there was it was a rough time for people. The 90s.
John Eric, does your experience parallel Chris's? What were you learning at that same time separately, and at what point do your paths intersect?
It's weird because traditionally our families have intersected since the 70s. Christine's dad and my dad actually worked together in insurance back in the 70s.
Wow.
We grew up on Temple Street. Her father was a vice president at FACLA, Filipino American Community of Los Angeles. It's one of the oldest community centers / dance halls that go back for Filipinos since the 40s. We've kind of passed by each other, but never knowing until eventually 98. But I was a kid that was living in the Rampart district, multi-ethnic, a lot of Latinos, a good chunk of immigrants from Central America, right? During the civil wars and the American policy of, intervention, people fled. So even Echo Park in itself, the Temple Street side, we definitely had an influx of immigrants from the Philippines, from Vietnam, from Guatemala, from El Salvador, Mexicans from Durango. There was just a bunch of us that were present in this community. And it was a hodgepodge of folks that, when we talk about the west side of Los Angeles, the west side gangs were founded here. And this is exactly an element where, as a kid growing up during the 80s and 90s, you could easily be caught up. But we were lucky enough to be exposed and have exposure from our siblings and support from our family to go to the local nonprofits in the area. So I went to the local kind of boys and girls club called SIPA. My family let us play Echo Park Little League. So there was elements of, you still try to do some quote unquote American things as far as being involved in some of the civic and community opportunities that were available. But at the same time, all kinds of things where people were really uncomfortable with each other were taking place. And for me to be exposed to a nonprofit that connected with other nonprofits, we had the Filipino nonprofit, Little Tokyo Service Center, the Japanese nonprofit, Chinatown Service Center, Thai CDC, a Korean Youth Community Center. So there was this camaraderie that took place, and then everybody kind of kept an eye on us. So we were able to do a lot of local social justice, advocacy work. That batch of kind of slightly older young adults were the young activists that connected with Christine's organization, Kababayan Alliance, and allowed us to do group facilitation workshops, leadership training workshops, public speaking, skill set development. And, you take these kids out to Arrowhead and these retreats and have them do the trust fall. You try to let them blossom as young kids, let them be kids, but also let them know, hey, man, there's some things that are happening. This is how we should address it. And we've tried our best to address it, tie it in with everybody else's struggles, and do something concrete on the ground. It all ties in, and we just applied all of these skills in our business. And now that the people need us, we're trying to apply it again.
It's almost like you've been preparing for this moment all your lives. This is going to be the most basic sounding question, but it's just because I want to hear maybe a short form answer from each of you to this. But what is community organizing and why is it important?
Community organizing is important because it allows for community members to identify their needs, their issues, and also equips community members with the tools and resources necessary to address those needs and issues.
Community organizing is making sure, as best as you can, ensure that those around you are okay. And to do so, it's knowing that if their rights are trampled upon, if there's people in need or those that are looking for resources and outlets, that we know how and where to go. That's really what it comes down to. We want exactly what's in the suburbs. We want exactly what happens in this American dream. And if we don't know how to get there, community organizing is finding the resources to do so.
Community organizing allows community members to create a roadmap to what it is that they envision.
What is your advice to somebody who either wants to get involved in existing programs or wants to create their own? I think a lot of people are realizing now more than ever that they need to be involved, want to be involved, and don't know where to begin. Where do you start?
You start small. You identify something where you want to begin to make change in, and you identify small steps. Our mentor actually pointed this out. The change that we make, it's really a small speck in the larger scheme of things, but it matters. And it's important for us to continue doing what we can in affecting our own immediate community, involving those who are in our community, working together and being there for each other, nurturing and building and developing those relationships to make sure people are good, caring for one another. And so it can start small. There's ways for the work of different organizations to overlap, but there has to be this common vision between these different groups. But once you identify the people around who you can work with, then you can do a lot. You can accomplish a lot more together.
I'm lucky because it's something that I grew up with. I connected with my folks. I connected with happiness. I connected with memories of just the experiences that I have in life. So I love my community, and it hurts when they hurt. It bothers me when we can't help, but it makes me believe that there's something better. We just got to figure it out.
I wanted to circle back to the thousands of meals Christine and John Eric have been preparing and delivering to workers in the LA greater healthcare community day after day after day during this COVID-19 pandemic. What does a day look like for you? I mean, I'm kind of envisioning this really cool catering truck, two cool kids in the front with beanies and sunglasses on, because I've seen your Instagram, and a whole lot of love in your hearts and determination. Just paint a short picture of what one day looks like when you guys are out on runs delivering meals, and also the reaction that you get from healthcare workers and all the people involved in that healthcare system.
So it starts with just mapping out where we're going to go and determining what the week is going to look like. So it starts with making calls to the different places that are requesting it. And it's pretty fun, actually, because I feel like I'm a radio show host offering free tickets to a concert.
Explain that.
People love to get free meals, and I love a free meal. So I feel like you win. So
I love that.
So especially when people know us and they like our food, and knowing that we're not open to the public, so it's like you're special when you're getting it, because some people have been craving the food that we've been cooking, but they can't order it because we've just been focusing on feeding healthcare workers at the time. So once we call them, folks are happy, and I feel happy to give the news to people that we can make it out, and we'd like to go to their location and take care of their department. So sometimes you get that wide range of happy emotions, and it's nice to see, because you could tell they feel the love.
John Eric and Christine schedule, they coordinate their crew, they do food preparation, they figure out if they have both lunch and dinner time deliveries, and they do this efficiently because they have exactly one delivery van. You have to look at their Instagram page for pictures because they're so telling of the joy that they are spreading, and I'll post some as well. And with that delivery van, they navigated nearly empty streets and roadways at the beginning of the COVID-19 isolation, and now they continue to venture out with food and friendship through the more traffic-heavy Los Angeles streets that we are all familiar with.
But once you get out there, folks are happy so that they get to eat the food, and some dance.
Aww.
Yeah, it's nice. We enjoy doing it. Sometimes they want to take a picture to share with the community that they received the donation, and it's nice because you could see folks smiling through their masks.
Yeah,
it's just that little thing, like, and we're happy to be able to do this, because this whole time is really scary.
Yeah,
for everyone, and to be able to provide something that makes them happy for that moment, we're glad that we can be a part of it.
And that brings me back to what you mentioned at the beginning, when everybody was looking at each other with fear, and then you had a donor come in to say, I want to help feed 800 people, not $800 worth, but 800 meals. How many meals have you all served now? Have you quantified that?
Big shout out to the Mommy Fund, because they have really extended the life of this project. We've been able to feed now over 20,000 healthcare workers throughout LA County, in the different hospitals and skilled nursing facilities. So we're really proud. We've been able to do this together with the support of the community. It's a big thing.
One more detail that I think is just such an example of life and giving coming full circle is the fact that both Christine and John Eric's mothers are retired healthcare workers. What do your moms think of what you two are doing?
So going back to why do we also happen to pick healthcare providers? We're Filipino. One in four, or is it 1 in 3 healthcare providers in California alone are most likely Filipino. Pinay specifically. So my mother came in the United States as a healthcare provider, as an operating room technician. So she was able to do high-scale surgeries for folks, taking care of their life and death moments. And I was a kid that would come by and drop off lunch. She would come pick up the food from us. And then she would also bring her doctors and the nurses and say, look at this boy. It's just great because in honor of my mom, and Christine will explain her mom's side, is that they were called. Literally, they were called. They're retired. She was called and said, hey, you want to come back to work, right? And instead of her having to go, I decided to go. So, she gets a kick out of it because as far as being a representation of Los Angeles, we put down the flag pretty strong, and it's in honor of her and the crew. So,
our mothers are happy that we're doing this. My mom's happy that we found a way to continue, because knowing how the restaurant industry has been impacted, she's glad we found this way to contribute, especially since Filipinos in the diaspora comprise such a huge sector of the global healthcare system. She's glad that we're taking care of Filipinos in LA. As a retired physician, she's happy that we're taking care of folks in the field. And she understands how hard it is for folks and how dangerous the conditions are. But she's glad that we're able to do it.
What are maybe 3 things each of you could list that you have learned from being involved from such an early age for both of you in community organizing?
Cool. I'll jump right in, because I think these 3 things: just toughen and temper up. It's okay to mess up, but be willing to be accountable and show up. That's what it comes down to. For us, those are some of the best memories growing up, and it's still to this day. I can tie everything that we're doing right now to the memories of organizing that we're organizing right now. So those elements are show up and laugh. I think that's what's key too. You got to show up and be able to laugh. This world is not nice, and sometimes these harsh realities come in place. But I learned at the gym with a bunch of grumpy people that fight hard. You got to laugh still. What's the point, man? Show up, punch hard, and laugh.
Love it. That's powerful.
So I think community organizing has taught me that, 1, you are not alone. 2, there's power in community. There's power to change things. But also you got to be grounded in reality and grounded in what it is that you want to accomplish for your community.
I want to ask you guys where people can find you online, and if they want to donate to be able to contribute meals or anything like that, where they can do that. And then I have a final question for each of you. So where can people find you guys online if they want to follow you or donate?
We have a website, theparksfinest.com. It has information there about the project we're running, a link to the GoFundMe. If folks are interested in helping to sustain the project, a donation can be made through that platform. On our Instagram handles, the Parks Finest.
Okay. Well, the final question I just wanted to ask before I let you go, because I don't want to keep you too long, is what do the words "another door opens" mean to each of you, if anything?
Isolation is a prevalent feeling during times of crisis. But what it reminds you of is the fact that you can find community. So whether that's perspective or just an analysis of what's happening in the world and what can we do together to kind of map out and work on changing things, knowing that there's just another way, as isolating or as lonely as a moment may feel, there's just another way to get through, and there's hope on the other side.
For me, another door opens means there's another opportunity to build. But that doesn't mean that the door that you came from is closed. For me, I think another door it's the next road. But we can go back. So it's the multiplicity of these options. When you add another door, it just grows. The chances grow, and the ability to build grows.
I just think the world of you and admire what you guys are doing and who you are.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sister, thank you.
Christine and John Eric want to remind their faithful clientele, rest assured we look forward to the day we can sit down together and celebrate normal life and continue serving the people back at the shop. In the meantime, stay safe, be strong, observe best practices to flatten the curve, be good to one another, and know we are in this together. I think that is as good a message as any to close with today. Christine and John Eric, thank you for being such supporters of the community and showing how to love through adversity, how to unite through adversity, how to grow stronger through adversity. And let's not forget even how to laugh, if we can, through adversity. Check out their site at theparksfinest.com, and that info will be in the show notes as well. Thank you for being my wonderful guests today. If you're new here, the Another Door Opens podcast is about open doors, open hearts, and open minds. I have conversations every week with different guests reminding us that everyone has a unique life perspective and lessons we can learn from them. Learning about people who have a different life experience than we do puts a crack in our ignorance. Learning about each other leads to understanding. Learning about each other helps us celebrate differences while realizing our shared experiences and common ground, too. That's what this podcast is about. The richness comes in listening to the singular episodes and in the aggregate of listening to many episodes, which together reveal in a small way the truth that we can celebrate differences and common ground at the same time. If we know more, chances are we will care more and judge less. Before I share a quick example of another door opening in my own life, which I sometimes do at the end of an episode, I want to say thank you to you for listening. This podcast is still very new, and it means the world to me that you're here with me on this ride from the beginning. Plus, I genuinely have so much fun making it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, who I appreciate so much. If you want to be a patron too, for as little as $1 a month, check out some of the perks that go with that and log on to patreon.com/anotherdooropens. Thank you also to every one of you who took a minute to rate or review Another Door Opens on Apple Podcasts. The more of that we can get, the more ears we'll reach. So thank you so much. And thank you to Eric Brown for the Another Door Opens drum beats soundtrack, and to Jonathan Raz, who edited this episode. On Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, follow us at Podcastado. That's at Podcast80. Ready for today's short story? Today's conversation, which centered so much around community, got me thinking about the fact that it's a gift to be surrounded by community, be it family or friends, within reach in the very same town where you live. Even as the introvert I am, I crave that. I have moved so much in my life, from Minnesota to Hong Kong, New York, Chicago, New York again, Miami, Chicago again, and then for a time with no fixed address, staying a while in New Mexico and ultimately ending up in California, that sometimes I can forget that despite not having my community all right here with me on this very dot of the planet, we are indeed still a community, spread out as we may be over states and countries. And you being here listening to this podcast today means you are part of my community, and I'm grateful to you. So even if you're feeling alone or isolated, I want to remind you of the perspective of also having community far and wide. And I want you to know you can find community here with me and this growing little podcast family. Follow those social media links and connect with each other and with me here and then there. I just want you to remember you have a place. Okay, that's the Another Door Opens podcast for this week. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next week. Love you. Bye.